Did you know approximately 74% of people approaching retirement are missing critical information that could impact their plans for the future? I've personally analyzed hundreds of retirement plans over the years. And through the course of this work, I've come to the conclusion of a pattern that shocks me. So many times, I find that people continue on working even though they have enough money to retire comfortably. In today's video, I'm going to share the tale of two retirees. One who continued working excess years despite being able to financially retire, and the other who had the confidence to step away. We're going to explore how these decisions differ and how they impacted not just their financial health, but their physical health, their relationships, and their quality of life over a 10-year period. The difference in outcome here might shock you, or it might actually sound familiar. But before we get into that, I want to take a minute to ask, if you find these videos helpful, please like and subscribe to our page. Have you ever wondered why so many people continue working even after they've reached their version of financial freedom? Let me introduce you to somebody named Michael. 62 years old, he's accumulated over $5 million across various investment accounts and has found that he has more than enough to retire securely. He's paid off his mortgage, he has no large outstanding debts, and by all financial measures in life, he's good to go. Yet despite all of this, Michael continues working 50 to 60-hour weeks, putting in a tremendous amount of time at his company. I've worked with several clients like Michael over the years, where someone like him accumulates wealth over time, understands that they have more than enough money to retire, in addition to being able to pursue their philanthropic and travel goals, and still continues to push themselves daily anyway. Despite all that, and understanding that they could make the leap to retirement, an excuse always comes up. For some reason or another, there's always something to postpone that day, whether it be volatility in the markets, working one more year, or just not being able to mentally comprehend that they can take that chance. Also, typically we see that one more year syndrome ends up turning into 3, 4, or 5 additional years, regardless of the fact that, again, the client understands that they have enough money. I believe what's going on here goes far beyond dollars and cents. And unfortunately, many times pre-retirees face psychological barriers that create unnecessary fear. 3 common mental roadblocks we see are identity loss, purpose anxiety, and financial insecurity. Let's take a look at another rather shocking statistic. According to a recent survey by the Employee Benefit Research Institute, 54% of those surveyed said that they would expect to work past the age of 65 or not retire at all. When asked why, the majority of respondents surveyed said that they felt financial insecurity. However, when each of their financial situations were examined more closely, it was found more often than not that they actually had more than enough money to retire. In Michael's instance, his title of vice president that he had earned over the course of 30 years became very tightly intertwined with his self-worth. This identity fusion can often make that separation feel like an amputation rather than a transition to a happy time in life. Introducing himself without his prestigious title makes him feel financial anxiety in social settings. That, coupled with volatile economic situations such as rising inflation or crazy ups and downs of the market, can really do a number on one's confidence when it comes to retirement, despite having a solid financial foundation. In Michael's situation, every dip in the market causes him to think that he needs to work just a bit longer. Despite having a sound plan in place and understanding that that plan is made to withstand the ups and downs of the markets and the economy, Michael still feels insecure about making the leap to retirement. What pre-retirees in Michael's situation often fail to calculate are the non-financial impacts that this decision-making could have on you over time. Health issues, such as elevated blood pressure or stress-related conditions, missing out on commitments due to feeling that you have to be tied down to your desk at all times, or even missing out on the most important things like spending time with your family or friends. These are all instances that we see commonly when we work with clients. The financial security that one might feel like they're building by delaying retirement could come with substantial costs in the way of health, family and friends, and self-well-being. This raises an important question. At what point does the pursuit of additional financial well-being become more harmful than helpful? For Michael and others like him, this financial independence that they have worked so hard to achieve over time ultimately becomes meaningless if you don't have the time to spend it. The assets across various investment accounts over time that Michael had saved for might continue to grow, yet our most precious resource, which is time, continues to diminish. Now, let's shift gears to look at a situation which, although having many similarities, has many important differences as well. Meet Sarah, a 60-year-old marketing executive, which has worked her whole life to build up a savings and has accumulated over $2.5 million. But, unlike Michael, although Sarah has to deal with similar feelings as far as having anxiety about financial freedom, increased healthcare expenses, and market volatility, decided to make the leap to retirement. During those first 6 months of retirement, Sarah repeatedly questioned herself. Anytime a hiccup or a correction occurred in the markets, Sarah questioned whether or not she had made the right choice. What made a major impact in the decision that Sarah made was the approach that she used. Rather than making a clean break from the workplace and retiring altogether at once, she was able to negotiate what we would know as a phased retirement with her employer, downshifting from 5 to 3 days per week. That gradual step down allowed Sarah psychological breathing room. So while she was able to maintain her connections professionally and personally through the workplace, she was also able to develop new hobbies and interests outside of work. The arrangement gave her ample time to understand that the transition needed to be made from glorifying her personal achievements in work to understanding what was actually important in her life outside of the workplace. In addition to that, Sarah and her team of professionals, which included her financial advisor, her attorney, and her accountant, put together a plan which was equally as methodical. Step 1 was creating what we would call the bucket approach and developing 3 separate buckets. This step is not necessary for all pre-retirees, but we have seen some great successes over time. The first bucket contained cash reserves, and short-term fixed income instruments, which allowed Sarah to have spending and wiggle room for the first 3 to 5 years out of retirement. This allowed her to put market volatility out of her mind. The second bucket was based more on intermediate-term goals, things like travel, hobbies, and gifting money to her grandchildren. The third bucket was geared more towards the long term and emergencies. This money was placed in a growth-oriented portfolio, which allowed Sarah to endure a little volatility, understanding that she had a longer time horizon, in addition to combating inflation. What actually surprised Sarah the most about making the change to retirement had nothing to do about the financial situation, but more to do with the change in her physical situation. Within 18 months of leaving her high-pressure job, Sarah felt remarkably better overall. Her sleep quality improved, her cortisol levels decreased, and her overall sense of well-being felt wonderful. These changes represented measurable health benefits that no amount of wealth could ever help you achieve. Retirement also allowed Sarah to strengthen her relationship with family and friends, which had become a bit strained due to her job. Contrary to fears of feeling a lack of purpose, Sarah was able to pivot pretty quickly and take on new challenges that made her feel great. She began offering her marketing expertise on a pro bono basis for nonprofit organizations, often aligning herself with places that shared the same values as opposed to corporate goals. When comparing the outcomes over the course of a decade following both Sarah's decision versus Michael's decision, the results are actually illuminating. The most successful retirees I've worked with over the years have multiple key factors in common. The first being they've created multiple streams of income in retirement far beyond just the traditional pre-tax retirement account. This can include things like Roth accounts, non-retirement oriented accounts, or even pensions. The second thing they do is remain level-headed. They have a plan which they've developed over the course of time with their trusted professionals, and this allows them to eliminate emotional decision-making when it comes to times of uncertainty like market volatility. The third thing they have in common is that their definition of wealth goes far beyond money. And this includes things like health, family, and friendships, in addition to personal self-fulfillment. The fourth thing they have in common is that they have a very clear vision for what post-work life looks like. In Sarah's situation, making the pivot to working for a nonprofit. Here's what I feel like many financial advisors are missing when addressing the retirement situation. That 74% confidence statistic that we spoke about earlier fails to take into the account real things that are meaningful to you in life. Again, like your family, your friends, your health, and things that bring you joy. At some point, you might ask yourself, which of these paths align with you? Are you working because you like to do it? Or are you working because you have a fear of retiring? In my opinion, the true meaning of enough has more to do with enough time to enjoy what you've built, as opposed to the number in your investment accounts. The freedom to strengthen relationships, better your health, and pursue long-term goals that you've always wanted to do but you've put off because of work can bring extreme satisfaction. The 5 most common potential tax traps that I see clients face in retirement are 1. RMDs escalating, 2. Social Security becoming taxable, 3. Medicare premiums increasing, 4. Estate tax issues when passing money on to the next generation, and 5. Unmissed capital gains or capital loss harvesting. Any one of these potential traps could hinder your retirement plans, and in today's video, I'm going to walk you through each of those 5 traps in detail, as well as steps that you can take to mitigate them on your path to retirement. As a financial advisor that's helped hundreds of families through their retirement planning over the years, I developed a framework that I'm going to outline today, and you can use as well. Please do not be overwhelmed when it comes to tax planning. By the end of this video, you're going to have a roadmap which includes actionable steps that you can take to help navigate your situation. The first thing I want to speak about, I've seen time and time again. The look of absolute shock on one's face when they've spent their whole life saving in pre-retirement accounts only to find out that they're going to have to take required minimum distributions at some point down the line. That look of shock typically comes from the fact that after saving diligently for all those years leading up to retirement, finding out that your required minimum distributions can actually push you into a higher tax bracket. Here's what happens. After all those years of saving and investing in pre-tax or traditional retirement accounts, Uncle Sam finally says he wants his cut. And you are forced, as it stands today at age 73, to start withdrawing from those accounts whether you want to or not. There is a small caveat to note here, and that is if you are currently employed, you are age 73 or over and eligible to take RMDs, you do not have to take those required minimum distributions from your current employer retirement account. Other than that case, these withdrawals are largely unavoidable and unfortunately can really stack up over time, especially if you're taking income from other retirement sources or other investment accounts. Let me paint a picture for you. Consider this. A happily retired couple has accumulated $1.2 million in their traditional pre-tax retirement accounts. In their first year of RMDs alone, they could be forced to take out up to $40,000, irregardless of needing that money for expenses. Not only is that a relatively substantial sum of money to take out and add to your income for the year in one fell swoop, it's also important to note that RMDs are not a one-off situation unless you choose to liquidate your retirement account in one shot. That number could actually increase exponentially over time, because not only does the portfolio theoretically grow as the assets are invested, in addition to that, the percentage that you must withdraw increases as you age as well. So, for instance, at age 73, you could be taking out somewhere around 3.7%. Meanwhile, as you age and you grow past 80 or 85 or 90, that number could more than double over time. As I mentioned earlier, I'm seeing more and more retirees get blindsided by this phenomenon. And that's because most have lived their lives going by the conventional wisdom that you'll be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. For previous generations with potentially smaller retirement accounts who might be relying on solely pensions or Social Security, that wisdom could be true. But for current generations who've spent their entire lives saving and built up quite a great nest egg, that information is becoming increasingly false. What's particularly important to understand is that planning for this starts way before you actually reach required minimum distribution age. Once you hit RMD age, your ability to navigate these withdrawals in a nimble manner decreases significantly. It's kind of like installing a security system after your house has already been broken into. So often, people focus solely on how much they're saving for retirement in an effort to pack as much away as possible, giving little thought to where they're saving or how they're going to withdraw that money one day in retirement. The tax consequences associated with your withdrawal strategy can have a significant impact on how much money you actually end up keeping and allowing you to live your life comfortably in retirement. Let's talk about another situation that I actually see take many people by surprise as well. A little known fact, many of us rely at some point on the fact that we're going to take Social Security in retirement. But something that many of us don't understand is that a portion of that, or a hunk of it, could actually be taxable. In fact, up to 85% of your Social Security could be eligible for taxes. And unfortunately, many of us don't realize this until we get hit with our first tax bill. After you've already worked your entire life and have paid taxes and paid into the Social Security system, it could be natural to think that that money would come out tax-free. However, this typically is not the case. This calculation includes anything from your adjusted gross income to any non-taxable income you receive, plus your Social Security benefits. As it stands now, once your combined income passes certain thresholds, your Social Security starts to become taxable. For married couples filing jointly, once your combined income exceeds $32,000, 50% of your Social Security benefits are eligible to be taxed. Once you cross that $44,000 mark, 85% of your benefit is eligible to be taxed. For those filing single, those thresholds are even lower, $25,000 and $34,000 respectively. What can make this particularly problematic in certain situations is when this intersects with withdrawals from your retirement accounts. Each dollar that you withdraw from your traditional or pre-tax IRA or 401k doesn't just get taxed on its own. It also has the ability to push you into a higher bucket as far as your combined and total income for your Social Security benefit taxation as well. Consider this. A married couple is currently taking $30,000 in Social Security income. In addition to that, they're taking $25,000 from outside sources. Add on retirement benefits as far as IRA distributions are concerned for another $20,000, and now they hit the $45,000 number where 85% of those benefits are taxable. As I mentioned earlier, this problem can actually be compounded by traditional retirement planning advice and saving in pre-tax accounts. Although you might be receiving that deduction on your income up front for your contributions, it could create a nightmare later on down the road. In understanding this, there are steps that you might be able to take to lessen the blow. And I'm not talking about any crazy loopholes or aggressive deductions. I'm talking about changing the way you think about your retirement savings and potentially executing Roth conversions. Let me walk you through what that means. A Roth conversion consists of taking money from a traditional retirement account and converting it to a Roth retirement account, essentially changing when you'll pay tax on that money. With traditional retirement accounts, you receive a deduction on your income up front, your earnings grow tax deferred, and you pay taxes on any money that you withdraw. With a Roth, you don't get the deduction up front, but any potential earnings and withdrawals in the future are tax-free. Here's where the magic happens. By strategically converting portions of your pre-tax retirement into Roth accounts in the years leading up to reaching RMD age, you might have the ability to lessen the blow when you do have to take RMDs out. The timing of these conversions can be crucial as well. In an ideal world, you'd want to do them in years where your income is lower in comparison to your working years. So this could be, if you're fortunate enough to retire prior to RMD age, all of the years added up before RMD age. Instead of waiting for RMD age, they could consider implementing a 10-year Roth conversion strategy whereby they convert $50,000 a year each year for 10 years into a Roth account. Yes, although you'll pay taxes on that money now, you might theoretically be at a lower tax bracket. In addition, you've converted $500,000 of pre-tax money into Roth money over that period of time, which again could grow, and any withdrawals that you end up taking out are completely tax-free. What I like about this strategy is that it addresses multiple tax situations that we spoke about earlier. Not only through these conversions could you potentially reduce or even eliminate your required minimum distributions, you'll also now have a tax-free bucket of money to use in retirement, which could provide you with more flexibility. This also loops back to what we spoke about right in the beginning, in that you might be able to navigate the situation where you're able to stay under those critical total income thresholds for Social Security. The beauty of the multi-year conversion is it allows you flexibility in how you convert, which can also allow you flexibility in your tax situation. Methodically choosing different amounts each year in order to keep yourself under those crucial tax brackets can become key in the long term. One important thing to take note of: a Roth conversion is not an all or nothing strategy. As I just mentioned, you can do this over the course of a period of time in order to try to keep your tax consequence to a minimum. Tax planning is about finding that sweet spot that works for you in your situation. And remember, it's not a one-off event. It's something that moves as time goes on and requires regular evaluation. Those years between when you stop working and start having to take required minimum distributions can be prime for an opportunity to make conversions. Are you worried that caring for your aging parents and supporting your adult children is destroying your ability to retire? With long-term care costs averaging over $100,000 a year and the cost of college tuition continuing to skyrocket, the math simply doesn't add up for most families. After working with clients for the better part of a decade who might be known as the sandwich generation, today I'm going to speak about the financial pressure points that some of you might end up facing over time, in addition to the framework that I developed to help you address them. Stick with me here, as we're going to talk about tools you can use to continue to focus on your retirement while also giving the attention and the money needed to care for the ones that mean the most to you. Have you ever taken a step back and wondered why you feel your retirement accounts might not be growing as fast as your peers say they are? The answer might actually be hidden right inside your day-to-day, but it's not too easy to take a step back and look at things from an outside perspective. If you're caring for aging parents, in addition to caring for your adult children, all while trying to save for retirement, you could be feeling squeezed by all sides. And if you're not feeling it financially at the moment, it could be brewing internally and add to unnecessary stress for your life. Let's break down what's really happening here. These three major responsibilities are not just competing for your time and attention, they're also competing for the same dollars in your bank account. This could create what some would consider to be a mathematical impossibility, as sometimes there's simply not enough money to adequately fund all three scenarios. In addition, something to be aware of is that you have to take care of your mental well-being as well as your financial well-being over time. The first pressure point I want to address that could feel crushing to some is taking care of aging parents. Consider this. The average 65-year-old could need up to $165,000 after tax annually to care for health expenses in retirement. But what happens when these expenses come up unexpectedly, before you've had time to prepare? Let's take a minute to talk about our hypothetical friends, the Jones family. When Mrs. Jones' mother unexpectedly experienced a stroke, the family quickly learned that Medicare wouldn't cover all of the expenses needed for her health. Within 18 months, Mrs. Jones spent over $120,000 from her own retirement portfolio to provide the specialized care her mother needed. This isn't just a financial burden, it can be very heavy on your emotions as well, as families often struggle with guilt, obligation, and worry that their own financial security is taking a toll. Now, let's talk about the second pressure point, caring for adult children much longer than expected. The phenomenon known as boomerang kids, which are adult children that return home and need financial assistance for much longer than anticipated, has become much more common given today's economic conditions. The rising cost of living and potentially overwhelming student debt has made the ability for young adults to get out and live the life on their timeline that their parents did to achieve financial security seem almost impossible. We're actually seeing more now than ever that this extended assistance is becoming more of the norm rather than the exception. Many parents today find themselves doing things like subsidizing housing, paying for premiums for health insurance, making car payments for their children, or even just acting as an emergency fund for their kids in their 30s and even into their 40s. What was once expected to be just a few years of assistance right out of college has changed into potentially a decade or more of financial help at the expense of your retirement savings. When these two pressure points converge, caring for aging parents in addition to helping your adult children, this is the perfect storm for your retirement plan. The financial resources that should be saved for your future over time are instead moving out of your pocket and out of your retirement accounts to multiple different areas in your life. This can create a very delicate situation where making sure that those around you have what they need to survive can take a very serious toll on your plans for the future. Now that we have a brief understanding of what's going on here, let's take a minute to talk about three critical mistakes that we see the sandwich generation make commonly. The first being not having those conversations early enough with the aging parents as far as what their healthcare costs and needs are going to be in the future. Although the conversation could seem weird at first, not having and or delaying this conversation could lead to financial burdens in the future. Too often we see families put in a hard place when they figure out there was no plan at all and it's too late, which ends up forcing reactive decision-making in times of high emotional uncertainty. The second mistake we see commonly is continuing to help out the adult children in the picture without establishing clear boundaries. When financial help lacks structure, timeframes, or expectations, it can unexpectedly lead to dependency, which can hamper your ability to save for your future. Parents oftentimes find themselves walking what could seem as a financial tightrope, often having to balance their children's immediate needs versus what their own long-term goals are. The third, and potentially most consequential issue here, is constantly prioritizing the needs of others over your own. While this generally comes from a place of love and responsibility, the harsh reality is that prioritizing others could significantly hamper your future plans. The cruel irony of this situation is actually interesting, in that by sacrificing your future to help others in the immediate, you might be creating the same landscape for your children that they will end up facing in the future. You may be familiar with the old airplane story, and that goes something like this. It's important in a time of craziness to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. Although counterintuitive, don't think that this approach is selfish. It's actually strategic, and it can become a lifeline for you when helping planning for your future. The traditional model of planning often fails the sandwich generation because, more typically, the situation occurred where you would raise your children, they would go off into the world, they would go to college and graduate, and they would be financially independent. At that point, you could spend a solid decade or so saving aggressively for retirement, in addition to potentially helping care for your parents for a few years before you decide to retire yourself. In our opinion, unfortunately, that's the world of yesterday, and we don't see things working out too often like that anymore. Now, we're going to dive into the framework that I think of specifically when planning for our clients in the sandwich generation. The foundation of this approach is one that I find to be non-negotiable. Saving for your retirement comes first, not last. What this means in short? Automatically setting up contributions to various types of investment accounts to ensure that you're saving for retirement over time. In a best case scenario, this forced savings takes priority over helping aging parents in addition to your adult children in the immediate. For many clients that I've worked with, this decision might seem selfish or a little off-putting, but a very interesting scenario takes place after a few months of doing so. And many clients end up finding out that they're able to make more level-headed decisions when it comes to family help as opposed to reactive emotional ones with their future. In this next piece of the framework, you can go about by establishing dedicated accounts with specific boundaries, one geared towards helping your aging parents and one geared towards helping your adult children. Similarly to your retirement, you could come up with dedicated monthly contributions to each account, which could help you make, again, more rational decisions over time as opposed to draining your retirement savings in a reactive manner. Remaining disciplined is key here, as when those accounts eventually empty, it'll force you to make decisions that might be more thoughtful as opposed to giving money away indiscriminately. When it comes to speaking to your aging parents about their financial and healthcare needs, it could be helpful that rather than approach the situation in a direct manner, which could cause defensiveness, to consider these talking points. Potentially saying something like, "Hey Dad, I'm considering getting my retirement and healthcare directives in order. What do you have going on?" Or, "Hey Mom, I read about this recent scam targeting seniors. Do you have all of your financial and bill pay priorities in line?" These indirect approaches can be a gentle way to have real critical conversations while still helping your parents preserve their dignity. As far as adult children are concerned, although it may seem unnatural, we do see that establishing clear-cut boundaries becomes essential. A method to do this would be considering a matching principle in your relationship, where your financial help would match their commitment. Whether it be something like rent, or a car payment, or paying back student loans, consider making matching contributions that are equal to what your child is putting forward themselves. After going through all these specifics, I want to make a quick list here for you to jot down. Again, rule number 1, make sure you're automating your savings to ensure that your retirement accounts are being contributed to on a regular basis and you're paying yourself first, not last. Second, establish clear accounts for different members of your family, whether it be aging parents or adult children, with clear boundaries. Third, hold consistent family meetings where these things are top of discussion and you feel open to clear the air, which can ensure smooth communication over time. In my opinion, 3 keys to these conversations are: number 1, having structure; number 2, providing transparency; and number 3, being honest with everyone involved. If you're feeling squeezed or stressed, please understand that you are not alone and this situation is becoming increasingly more common. Have you been saving your entire life waiting for retirement, but instead of making the shift from saving to spending and enjoying it, you're too nervous to actually start using that money? If so, you're not alone. According to the 2024 Retirement Confidence Survey, just 68% of workers and 74% of retirees felt that they had saved enough money to live comfortably in retirement. Hey everyone, Gabe Galanti here, fiduciary financial advisor, owner, and CEO at Rockline Wealth Management. Over the last 12 years, I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of families on their retirement and financial planning. And today, I'm going to talk about the top pain points that we see pre-retirees and retirees go through when it comes to making the transition into retirement and spending down their money. In addition, I'm going to speak about 3 simple strategies that you can implement to help shift your mindset in order to help you live more comfortably. And be sure to stick around to the end, where I'm going to cover what I would consider to be the number one most important mindset shift that you can make. The first key strategy and mindset shift I want to speak about today brings to mind tennis superstar and icon Naomi Osaka. By the age of 23, Osaka had already experienced incredible success in the world of tennis, having won 4 Grand Slam titles, including the 2020 US Open. Many would consider Naomi at that point to be at the peak of her career. However, what nobody was able to see was the continued bouts that she faced with anxiety and depression. Some of you may remember when this came to the surface and Naomi ended up having to withdraw from the 2021 French Open. This decision allowed many critics to come out of the woodwork, and despite all of Naomi's successes, she faced a tidal wave of negativity. Rather than pack it in, Naomi made a mindset shift. She ultimately went on to become a mother and ended up rising from being ranked outside of the top 800 players around the world to being ranked in the top 10 in the world in 2025. This brings me to my first key strategy, and that is focusing on what you can control. Fear-mongering and clickbait news surrounds us in all forms of our life. Whether you're watching TV at night, you're reading the newspaper, a magazine, or even in social media. Drowning out that noise and focusing on things you can control, such as your asset allocation, your budget, and your withdrawal rate, can help you to eliminate that fear and anxiety and live out the life that you want in retirement. The second strategy is one that I have found to be very useful in many aspects of life, and I have to give credit to Tony Robbins for this inspiration. For those of you that are not aware of who Tony Robbins is or have not heard of him, he is one of the greatest motivational and inspirational speakers of our lifetime. Believe it or not, as Tony has told his story many times over, despite being an incredible success, super confident, and making change in many people's lives, early on in his own life, he was actually completely lost. He grew up in a household that struggled financially. His father left him from a young age, and his mother was abusive. After continuous struggling and having what some would consider to be an emotional breakdown, Tony decided that it was time for a change. It was time to take control. He decided to go all in on focusing on his body and mind, consistently exercising, and dedicating his time to self-improvement and education. One of the biggest shifts he made was turning his focus to helping others. The level of personal fulfillment that he was able to attain by helping others accomplish their goals was unmatched by anything he had ever felt before. By finding what brought him fulfillment, he was able to gain confidence and continually grow both personally and professionally into the success that he is today. This leads me to my second mindset shift, and that is living a life of intention in retirement. When you live life intentionally, pursuing things that you're passionate about, whether it be traveling or donating your time or money, it helps bring you stability, which can help lead to confidence that you need to have a successful retirement. This next mindset shift is one that I find to be the most important and impactful. Sarah Blakely, world-class entrepreneur and the founder of retail brand Spanx, was not always the trailblazer that she is today. In the early stages of her career, Sarah earned her income by selling fax machines door to door. As one might imagine, this brought tons of stress, and she faced much more rejection than success during this time. She eventually had the vision to create some sort of footless pantyhose, but she had zero experience in retail or fashion at that point. Despite what would seem like an endless list of obstacles to overcome, Sarah created a plan. She went on to follow and execute on that plan through grit, determination, and faith in what she wanted to do was to help others through her product. In watching her idea come to life, Sarah formed what we know today as the company Spanx, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. The lesson here is my third key, and that is, although making that leap from retirement and saving money your whole life to spending that money down might seem nerve-wracking, developing a plan, whether by yourself or with a group of trusted professionals, can help you bring the confidence that you need. These 3 keys can be very helpful in making the transition. Did you know that over 18 million homeowners in the United States are considered to be house poor, according to an analysis by LendingTree? As the cost of home ownership continues to rise across the country, we're starting to see a theme where savers could potentially jeopardize their retirement. Over the last 12 years, I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of families on their financial and retirement plans. And today, I'm going to speak about 6 pros and cons of a strategy that I think can help you avoid having your money locked in your home which is downsizing in retirement. The first potentially positive outcome that I'd like to speak about today as far as downsizing in retirement goes is that you are putting money directly back in your pocket. Larger homes tend to come with larger expenses, whether it be a larger mortgage, larger taxes, larger utility bills, or larger maintenance. These are all examples of costs that could impede your ability to save and don't necessarily provide a great return on investment. Downsizing, in many cases, can help you potentially slash the cost of living, which, in turn, could help you do productive things, such as saving more money in the bank, investing more money over time, or even just using that extra money to do other things that you enjoy. Important key to note here, although downsizing in retirement could be a hit to some egos, I've never heard somebody at the end of retirement say that they wish they had kept their larger home. The second potential positive outcome of downsizing in retirement is something that might not come to mind initially, but also is pretty important, and that is freeing up your time. A quote that is near and dear to me goes something like this: "Time is your most valuable asset, because once it's gone, you cannot get it back." As you may know if you've owned a house for a while, there are a bunch of potential unknowns that could come up over time, such as a leaky roof, a broken pipe, a broken appliance, whatever the case may be. And the fact of the matter is, these type of things do come up, and they can take up your time and derail you from your day. In addition, they probably also will add to a level of stress. Downsizing could potentially lead to less of these headaches. Less home or less property could potentially lead to less issues. I've actually heard in many instances, living somewhere like in an HOA or a community provides a great lifestyle, as you don't need to worry about certain things as far as maintenance is concerned, such as shoveling snow. The third potential positive is one that I see to be predominant in the decision-making process, and that is similar to my last point in, again, having less stress. There are a variety of different factors that we see lead to this decision based on the person or people involved, but some of the themes that we see commonly occur are the fact that you could have more freedom, less chores to worry about, or again, even more time just to do the things that you enjoy doing. As with most decisions in life, there are also negatives to weigh out here too. The first one I want to talk about, as far as a negative outcome that you could face, is something that you should think about prior to making any moves, and that's the fact that you could have substantially less space. After years and even decades of living somewhere, you might have accumulated a bunch of stuff, whether it be tools in the garage, clothing, articles that you keep in the closet, or even stuff in the kitchen that you haven't used in forever. Coming to grips with the fact that you might have less space for storage over time is something that you're really going to need to think over and understand clearly what you want to keep and what you need to keep. The next potential downside to be aware of is something that I've seen time and time again and can add up pretty quickly, and that is the fact that there are multiple costs associated with making a move. Moving can be expensive when you take into account all the different things occurring, whether it's the cost of actually making the move, the cost of buying storage space or renting storage space for your stuff that you can't fit in the home, or even the costs associated with the real estate transaction itself. Setting an expectation and budgeting can help you feel mentally prepared and not get caught off guard when going through this scenario. If you need a little help or something to solidify your budgeting, check out our expense analysis worksheet in the description below. Another potential downside to be aware of, and one that I find to be most intense, is the emotion involved in leaving the home. You might have built up years and years or even decades of memories in the home, and leaving that all behind can be very hard for some. In having these conversations time and time again, different folks form different memories. Things like the hardships and struggles that you had to face when you first moved into the home to pay the bills, watching family and friends hit certain milestones over time that you associate with the home, or even just all that you had to go through to keep things together. The emotional sense of pride and identity tied up in one's home can be very difficult to overcome. But shifting your mindset to embracing all the good and all the amazing times that you had there can help you to overcome this feeling and move forward. Do you have a few $100,000 saved up to pay for healthcare costs in retirement? According to a recent study by Jackson National, nearly 2/3 of pre-retirees severely underestimated the cost of healthcare in retirement. Hey everyone, Gabe Galanti here, fiduciary financial advisor, owner and CEO of Rockline Wealth Management. Over the last 12 years, I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of families on their retirement and financial planning. And today, I'm going to walk you through 5 critical pillars surrounding Medicare and long-term care planning to help you prepare for what could be one of the most expensive pieces of your retirement plan. And be sure to stick around to the end, where I'm going to go over what I would consider to be the most overlooked component of medical care costs in retirement. The first critical pillar I want to demystify for you today are the different parts of Medicare and how they might apply to you. For those of you not aware, Medicare consists of 4 parts. Part A, which is hospital insurance, covers inpatient care in hospitals, care in skilled nursing facilities, hospice care, and home health care. Part B, which is medical insurance, and covers things like doctors and healthcare providers, outpatient care, durable healthcare and medical equipment, and preventative services like shots and vaccines. Part C, also known as Medicare Advantage, is an alternative to Parts A and B and can include bundled services such as vision, hearing, and dental. And Part D, which is drug coverage. And just like the name says, it can help cover costs associated with prescriptions. Now that we have an overview of the different pillars of Medicare, it's time to talk about how you might get signed up versus your initial enrollment period. Typically, one's initial enrollment period includes the 3 months prior to turning 65, the month in which you turn 65, and the 3 months after you turn 65. With that said, if you're receiving Social Security due to disability or retirement, you'll automatically be signed up for Parts A and Part B when you become eligible. If you don't fall into that category, you'll need to apply yourself in order to complete your enrollment. Once you enroll in Part A and Part B, you can explore the additional pieces to the puzzle, which include Part C and Part D. The third critical pillar of Medicare and long-term care planning is understanding what your options are if you're continuing to work past the age of 65. Before I hop into that, please do remember, regardless of if you're working or not, you will still have that 7-month window for your initial enrollment period. Now, depending on your employer's coverage, you may be able to delay that enrollment without facing penalties. In order to figure this out, I would suggest speaking with your benefits manager to further understand if your employer's coverage is creditable or not. This means that your coverage through your employer is at least as good as the coverage provided by Medicare. If so, this could be an instance where you may be able to delay enrollment and not face penalties when enrolling at a later date. In order to qualify, you would need to enroll within 8 months of losing your or your spouse's coverage in the workplace or stopping work altogether. The fourth critical pillar of Medicare and long-term care planning is understanding the costs associated. If you want to gain a more concrete idea of what your long-term care needs could be, please feel free to check out the calculator we've provided in the description below. Although in many cases, there are no premiums associated with Medicare Part A, there could be deductibles associated with hospital visits and copays associated with inpatient stays. In order to understand who falls into the category of not having to pay for Medicare Part A, it typically includes individuals who have worked for a period of time and paid Medicare taxes, with that window being about 10 years. With Medicare Part B, there is a premium associated with coverage, and that premium can increase on an annual basis depending on your income. In addition, there's a deductible associated with Medicare Part B, and there could be additional costs for other services. With Medicare Part D, for your drug coverage, there are premiums associated. In addition, if you choose to go the route of a Medicare Advantage plan, there are monthly premiums associated with that as well. The next critical pillar of healthcare and retirement is the one in which I feel is most often overlooked. Along with our advancement in society and innovations continuing to accelerate, we're seeing the average life expectancy of us as humans continue to grow over time. And with that growth comes the need for long-term care, among other things. Although there's a wide variety of types of long-term care, ranging from in-home care to skilled nursing facilities, we've commonly seen these costs range somewhere from thousands of dollars a month to tens of thousands of dollars a month on the high end. Planning for these types of costs earlier in life can help you with that burden down the road. Proactive steps such as saving in a health savings account, buying a long-term care policy, or even working with an estate attorney and Medicaid planning are all steps to consider for this.